Morning, everyone. Welcome to Currencies Direct's first ever webinar. I'm watching the participants and the attendees climb here. We've got over 500 people registered for this morning's chat, so welcome. Thanks for having us. While we wait for everyone to just join in, because I see it's climbing, we're only on sort of 280, we need a couple of guys to come in. I thought maybe we'd host a little poll. So let's pop that up. We've got some IT guys. What did you guys have for breakfast? It's a little interactive polling. Always interesting to see if everyone got their nutrition in this morning. Okay, so I see while people are in there, we've got the chat box. Guys are using it, which is fantastic. Please, put your, just introduce yourself. Put your name and your company that you're representing. We've got a lot of Pam Golding guys in from George and the Peninsula. Morning, guys. Morning, Nadia. Thanks for joining us, guys. We've got Barry, we've got Seif, we've got Sotheby's, we've got... So we're all in from the property sector here to help you guys navigate your property opportunities. Let's have a look and see if we can pull up the results of our poll. Cereal. So a lot of people get their fiber in. Not to me, 23% for eggs. I'm an eggs man myself. Nothing worth mentioning. Okay, maybe we need to focus on that. Okay, guys, well, I think let's get cracking. We're close to 500 now, so welcome everybody, and thanks again for your time. My name's Graham Barrett. I'm one of the directors of Currencies Direct here in South Africa, and we just want to welcome you and thank you for coming. A lot of you are existing partners or hopefully potential partners going forward, and I'll give you a little rundown of how today is going to go. So you'll see at the bottom, we've got the chat function. A lot of you guys are doing that. So welcome, guys. Then we've also got a Q&A function. So we're going to start with a short 5-7 minute presentation from our leading real estate sector consultant, Tony Swartstraber. He's going to give you a short insight into who Currencies Direct is, what we do, and how we can assist you guys when navigating your opportunities through the real estate sector. We're then going to move on, and I'll introduce Dr. Botha, who's the big show today, and he'll give us our, his normal riveting 30-minute, 40-minute presentation on the economy, with a focus on the real estate sector as well, with a couple of slides that he's been doing some extra work on. So that's the order of events. If you've got any questions, we'll have a look. We're going to try and promptly end at about 11:45, so we've got 40 minutes left. If we've got some time, pop the questions in on the question and answer session. Our IT guys in the background will either answer them, link to our dealing desk, or if they are posed for Dr. Botha, mention it, and I will then give him, provided we've got enough time at the end, we'll do a bit of a Q&A with Dr. Botha at the end. So thanks, guys, for joining, and over to you, Tony.
Right, guys, here we are. Morning. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So we're going to keep this, I'm going to keep my part very short and upbeat, but I just want to share with you guys who we are. So where do we normally live? Here at the Portside building in town, when we can normally go there, but we also have offices in Joburg and Durban. We are way past our teenage years. We're 24 years old. We're established in 1996, and we love our happy customers. You can check them out, what they thought about us in Trustpilot if you're new to us. We also have the highest level of creditworthiness with Dun and Bradstreet. And last year, we moved 132 billion rand across the globe. Now, here are some of our favorite places around the world. You can find us at any of these locations. Our head office is still in Canary Wharf in London, where we started out. So, but what do? Well, in a nutshell, we transfer money for many different reasons. One of them being, of course, immigration, property purchases, export, import, any reason you can really think of. Are you buying a custom-made outfit for your cat from Texas? We can help you. And you know what? We won't judge. We do all of this by opening bank accounts for our clients remotely. We handle all the necessary paperwork. And lastly, most importantly, we also maximize the value of that foreign currency to make your rands go further or that foreign currency go further. So how do we do that? Well, if you remember, I mentioned we move a lot of money around the world. Banks like that. They want to be friends of us. So instead of the client going directly to his bank without much negotiation power, he ends up getting a standard margin, in this case, 60 cents. This is about the average. Now, we are able to leverage our global flows to negotiate a much tighter margin with the bank. As you can see here, our client is getting 20/20. So bang, he saves himself 40 cents. Now, what does that relate to? Well, to give you an example, we had a client down here in the Cape wanting to buy a property for just under 7 million. Now, he and the seller, they couldn't agree on that last 100,000 rand. Well, we got involved, and in the currency conversion, we saved him 160,000 rand. So that's what a 40 cents saving looks like on 7 million rand. A little bit about what's happening with the rand. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. So when looking at this slide, at first, it looks like the rand got the flu, and then someone called it names. But now, of course, we know there's a lot more involved in that. These two events had a huge economic impact on South Africa and our currency. You can see both events had immediate jumps on the euro versus the rand as they came into the country. Also here, for the British pound, immediate big jumps. Now, where is the opportunity in this? Well, there is opportunity in having a weaker rand. Let's say, for example, you got a German client. Now, he came in January. He looked around the 5 million rand mark, loves the country. At the time, he was looking at a 16-15 conversion for his euros to rand. That makes 5 million about 309,000 euros. Now, he didn't buy at that time, but now, just a few months later, he's looking at close to 20 versus the euro. So now that same property is only costing him 253,000 euros. So if you relate that back into rand, that same property is now costing him to the rand equivalent of just over 3.8 million. That's a 1.1 million rand saving for the same property he just saw a few months ago. So we've been very busy with these kind of sales. And also just parking money. As mentioned, we open accounts remotely, and clients can make use of this great exchange rate we have right now, park funds, earn some interest, and that funds is earmarked for property purchases, and then at the later stage, they can find the one they want to buy. Now you might be asking yourself, well, what if a client wants to just come and see the property at a later stage and then bring the funds in? Well, the question then arises, are these extreme rates going to be around forever? Well, this is what Standard Bank thinks is going to happen. Their prediction, and many economists agree with this, that the rand will strengthen again. They're looking at the losses being recuperated over the next 6 to 12 months, and they reckon by next year we'll be at 15.50 to the US dollar, and a similar story for the euro. They're looking at 18.91 by next year. Now, the pound is another story. If you recall, before Brexit, it was about 23 to the rand-pound exchange. So the expectation is that the pound will actually increase further in value, which we'll have to wait and see. Of course, these are just predictions. We'll have to wait and see what will the outcome be. So if you are currently chatting to a client, you're working with somebody, this is anything really, a client who's South African, who's worked overseas, any international transfer, you're talking over WhatsApp or the phone, you can mention, listen, I've got some guys that can maybe help you. You can put us directly in touch with them to answer their questions. That's normally what they do. If they've got a list of questions, or you can introduce us via email. Another benefit is that we don't do blanket marketing with big billboards. Money is a sensitive issue. We prefer to be referred by professionals like yourselves. So we'd rather pay you in form of referral commission. Now, this is just a portion of what we were able to make on the trade, and that really helps as well. So just briefly, 3 things. Your client is happy, he saves money, the sale goes through smoothly, the money comes in. That's great. And on top of that, we've got referral commission system as well. So we're really looking forward to meeting most of you that we haven't met before and chatting to you about how we can assist you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Okay, guys. Yeah, so just a brief insight into who we are and what we do and how we can assist. We have mentioned a couple of times in the chat, there's a lot of guys stating who they are, where they're from. We've put our contact details in there. So please be sure to give us a shout if you are not receiving our daily mailer. It's one of our crowd pleasers. We're even doing podcasts weekly now, where we're letting you know kind of what the state of the rand is and where we're sitting. And it's sort of economic jargon put in layman's terms. So, when we're having a braai, or one day when level 3 turns to level 2 to 1, and hopefully we can have a braai with our mates, we can chat about what's going on in the economy and actually sound like we know what we're talking about. So, looking forward to those days. All right, so now we on to the big show. Dr. Botha, we have partnered with Dr. Botha, and he's we developed a relationship 2 years ago when we had our roadshow, and we just sort of was a symbiotic relationship in a sense. His outlook has always been positive on what's going on in South Africa, and we like that, and we got on really well. So since then, we've sort of developed a relationship, and he's our sort of economic advisor in terms of these sort of presentations. So we're fantastic to have him on board. He's also the author of our monthly document that we put out called The Bright Side. And the tagline for The Bright Side is "To Make Cynics Weep." It's a couple of articles that Dr. Botha will scratch and find, hopefully not to have to dig too deep, to find the good news that's going on in South Africa and what's happening in the economy, as well as the currency compass, which is what we've developed together, called the real effective exchange rate, and he'll chat a little bit more about that. But let's understand. So Dr. Botha, who is he? He completed his honors and master's degrees in economics via evening classes, cum laude, at the University of Pretoria, and also did a doctorate at the University of Johannesburg. He shared a platform with 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners, and is the previous winner of the Finmedia Economist of the Year award. Professional experience spans over more than 40 years. He's been the economic policy advisor at National Treasury, financial editor of a daily newspaper, senior lecturer in economics and various universities, chief economist at the SA Federated Chamber of Industries. He's the economic advisor to the Optimum Investment Group. But the very best of it all, well, what he's most famous for, is last year he predicted that the Springboks would win the World Cup, and we did. So if he says it, it's going to come true, hopefully. He's also been in the ear of the Monetary Policy Committee, telling him to reduce interest rates, and so come hell or high water, it's started to happen. Dr. Botha, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Graham. I trust everybody can hear me. By the way, I've got my 95 World Cup tie. That's the first time we won it. And in terms of attempts and successes, the Boks are the best rugby side in the world. If there are any New Zealanders listening, tough is. So let's get cracking. I need to share my screen. I must just tell you that having listened to various members of the Command Council over the last couple of weeks, I've realized that there must be a lot of people in Parliament with PhDs. But that's, of course, the other version, passed high school with difficulty. So let's go straight on to the more serious stuff. And I'm going to maybe differ just very slightly with Tony on the impact of the junk status, but that's not too serious. So we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. I don't have to tell anybody that. If it's any consolation, there is not one single economy in the world, unless you're living on a very remote island with 20,000 inhabitants, probably, that is not in trouble, and they'll probably also be in trouble because of the decline in tourism. So this is an unparalleled event. It cannot be compared to anything that that we've seen in the past to compare this with the Great Depression is absolute nonsense, because that just lasted on and on and on, went on for more than a decade. The banking sector wasn't developed. There were virtually no infrastructure on the whole of the African continent. It had just started developing. So this is something which is unparalleled. And the really good news is it's not going to last very long. I like to believe that. The virus will be with us for quite a while still. And we need to learn to live with it and to follow the health protocols and hope for the best. And if you're slightly younger than me, the chances are that you will live on to into your 90s, especially if you exercise as regularly as me and Graham. So let's start with the relatively bad news, as I like to call it. Capital market mayhem. I think that's a very apt description. Antonio has touched on that already. The one issue that economists are very concerned about, and I share their concern, is the fact that our government debt GDP ratio is increasing, and it will continue to increase under the current circumstances. Make no mistake about that. But we are still in a pretty good space. We are way below most of our major trading partners. A shrewd observer will tell me, yes, but we are paying more interest because our yield is higher. That is true, but it's coming down rapidly. And just in case Graham forgot, I also predicted not long ago, I think it was on the 5th of May, when we had a chat. I think that was sent to your clients. I predicted that the South African bond yield, the 10-year bond yield, will decline within 2 months by 300 basis points. And I nailed that one, and I think I was the only one. Some of my peers mocked me. The ones that are decent have called to apologize.
Doc, sorry to interrupt there. Would you mind just speaking a little bit louder, sort of closer to the PC? Some guys were saying they couldn't hear you.
Okay. Is that better?
That's much better.
Clearly, Graham?
Yeah, that's much better. There we go. Maybe we just need to clear the cobwebs after your run this morning.
Okay. So just to show you the slide that Tony also showed you about the Rand. Now, there's a difference of opinion on this one, which is not the end of the world. It's very difficult to determine what the impact was of the junk status. Immediately afterwards, within about 12 to 24 hours afterwards, the Rand actually strengthened. The fact is that the junk status had been discounted for quite some time. So I like to believe that this spike that you saw, this huge spike in the Rand-dollar exchange rate, was caused almost exclusively by the COVID-19 pandemic. Then it was very volatile, and at some point in time, some economists were saying 20, forget about 20, we're talking 25 now. I happen to know who they are. I think one or two of them were in my class at UJ. They did not do very well, if I remember. Because I said that the Rand is more likely to go to 17 in the next couple of months than it is to go to 21, 22. Those ridiculous, forecasts. Because you have to look at our balance of payments. You have to know where to start with your fundamental research. And look what the Rand is doing right now. So, yes, there are still a lot of opportunities, because the Rand could very easily go back to between 15 and 16 within the next 6 to 18 months. Soos in Afrikaans sê, dit smeer die yster terwyl hy warm is, I mean, there is an opportunity. Make hay while the sun shines. Here is the Currencies Direct rear, which we publish every month in Currency Compass, which is part of the bright side. If you don't receive this, it's only once a month. And it's not that difficult to look for good news in our economy if you know where to look. Please advise Graham and Abel and the crowd there, and Tony and them, that you can receive that. So the red line, not to be too technical, that is where the Rand wants to be. It's the long-term average real effective rate. And as you can see, if you look at above the red line, when the Rand is above the red line, it means it's overvalued. Now, this works differently. This is the value of the Rand. The currency that you see, the exchange rate that you see in the papers every morning, that's the price of a dollar. This is the price of a Rand. So when this blue line is declining, it means the Rand is depreciating, and vice versa. It was, if you look at this towards 2016, Zupta Gate, that was when we hit bottom state capture, the unbelievable incompetence at the time. And then we were very rapidly on our way back. to overvalued status when the trade wars hit us and then the coronavirus hit us. And currently the rand is about 22% undervalued. That was the end of April. The good news is that I foresee in our next edition, which will be next week, we'll prepare that it's going to jump a little bit back into the right direction. And long may that continue. But as I said earlier, if you want to bring Forex into the country, don't wait too long. So this is what happened between the end of last year and 23 April to emerging market currencies, and not only them. Have a quick look here. Look at what happened to the Australian dollar. It declined in value by more than 9%, which was quite strange. Even the euro took, in relative terms, hammering. If you look at the relationship between the euro and the dollar over the longer term, this was extraordinary. And the rand, well, next to the Brazilian real, we were, not doing very well. Look what happened in the last month. Now we're the second best performing emerging market currency in the world over the last month. So those cynics that think the rand is not worth anything and it will never recover, take a break, or a hike, or both. South America is still battling a little bit. Brazil is battling a little bit. I see that in many of those dams in the iron ore producing district have been shut down again because of safety concerns, which is unbelievably good news for South Africa's iron ore sector, and you can see what's happening in that sector as well. So just to put that in the slide format as well, the one below the zero, the negative ones, is until 23 April from the beginning of the year, but that's turned around, and the strength will continue with volatility. That's why you need people like Currencies Direct to guide you. Construction also in the doldrums. Now I can virtually guarantee you that in the next couple of months you will see a lot of tower cranes, a lot of dump trucks with aggregate on it, etc., in your vicinity, because construction is the most labor-intensive sector of this economy, and it's government's most obvious choice to prioritize to get this economy growing again. Because whatever our public debt is, you don't look at public debt in absolute terms. You look at it as a percentage of GDP. So you've got a denominator below the line. And if they can just get the GDP growing, which will happen, it will happen within the next 2 quarters, then obviously the whole sum will start declining. And we should be home and dry. Every country in the world has the same problem as far as that's concerned. So hopefully this will start picking up. And by the way, if you think construction is on its knees, just have a look at that firm, Afrima, listed on the JSE. They're doing unbelievably well because of good management and a bit of diversification. Household disposable income. Bad news is that in real terms, it's stayed flat ever since Mr. Zuma became president, and especially during the latter 5 years of his disastrous term of office, with all the state capture and the incompetence in the public sector at large. But in nominal terms, and that's what people look at when they get their salary slips or the bank statements. They look at how much money have I got. They don't go and find out what is this worth in 2015 rands and stuff like that. So in nominal terms, we're still doing very well. We will probably take a bit of a dip, as we did there in the middle of that slide, the red line, with the previous recession, which lasted for 3 quarters. This one will probably last for 2 quarters. That's my guess. 3 at most, I like to believe, but I am an optimist, as you know. All these slides remind me, of course, of the definition of a statistician. One of my favorites. Graham has heard this 17 times. A statistician will tell you if your feet are in the oven and your head is in the freezer, on average, you are quite comfortable. But please don't try that. Okay, so what can happen in the next couple of months? I think it's terribly important for everybody, especially our clients, to start thinking beyond this box that we've been in. The English call it cabin fever. If you've been locked into a place, I mean, this is part and parcel of lockdown. I mean, a lot of people have probably developed cabin fever. There's an interesting Afrikaans translation for that. It has 2 words in. The one is hook, and the other one I can't repeat right now. But anyway, we need to think out of this lockdown environment, because we're on our way out. We're on our way out. And the JSE has not wasted any time. It's not wasted any time, but there's still a lot of gains that can be made here as well. So quite frankly, if I was sitting in any place outside of South Africa, Europe or the United States or whatever the case may be, and I had a look at this slide, I must be quite honest. I mean, I I would seriously consider buying some property, obviously, and also buying some blue chip shares. And it's just a matter of time before there will be new kids on the block that may move into the Edcon spaces in the retail centers if they do go under, which was on the cards because of not the best management in the world, as far as I'm concerned. So the real estate investment trusts will also start picking up pretty soon. And as you know, their dividend yields are fantastic. Some of them may not be paying dividends this year, just like many other companies. But that's for a good reason, because they are preserving their manpower, their staff, which is a better option, obviously. But the JSE has started bouncing back quite nicely. There's the recovery of our 10-year bond yield, which is quite magnificent. There's still a lot of money to be made on the capital gain side, I believe, on bonds as well. If you need any advice on that, you are welcome to also contact me via Graham, and I'll put you in touch with the guys and girls at Optimum, who are taking care of my my pension that I got at UJ, and very well so. Here you can see that our bond yields are still, despite the decline of 300 basis points, still very attractive. Our yield should be more or less on par with Brazil, India, Russia, and it isn't. So there's huge opportunities, and this is one of the main reasons why the rand has strengthened in the last couple of weeks. The interest rate, I've been pleading with the Reserve Bank for ever since Jill Marcus actually retired, to not follow such a restrictive monetary policy stance. And I asked them a week before the lockdown to please lower the repo rate by 200 basis points. And I got my wish, but for the wrong reasons. Because real GDP is going to be negative in the second quarter, with no doubt about that whatsoever. So the gap between the real prime rate, prime minus CPI, and GDP growth in real terms has still been maintained. I like to believe that the cabinet, Mr. Ramaphosa, and especially Mr. Mboweni, will put enough pressure on the Reserve Bank to keep the interest rates low for a considerable period of time, at least probably a year or two. I hope I'm correct on that one. Because what that does is it puts money into the pockets of people with mortgage bonds, and then they can do whatever they want to do with that money. Hopefully they'll spend most of it, because that means the economy will be growing. People don't spend money. There's no economy. And I think it's pretty natural that once you have certain that you still have job security, even if you were forced to take a haircut for 3 months, whatever the case may be, at some point in time, you'll realize, well, you know, I deserve a new car. And especially with the low interest rates, that might be happening. And speaking of cars, there is a predictable positive correlation with a slight lag between GDP growth and new vehicle sales in South Africa. And GDP growth, of course, or new vehicle sales are inversely correlated with the lending rate. Now that the lending rate is at an all-time record low, it's just a matter of time. Once the economy starts growing again, when this will start taking off, and that's also always a very good sign, because we have a very vibrant motor manufacturing sector in South Africa with all the component industries as well. As far as mortgage advances are concerned, traditionally also an inverse correlation between the prime rate. If the prime rate declines, people can afford more mortgages to increase their mortgages because the payment remains the same, etc. And we saw that. And many of you, most of our viewers will remember this fantastic period when the economy and the property sector in particular was really booming in South Africa. Then we hit that hangover, and despite the subsequent decline in the prime rate here during Jill Marcus's era as Governor of the Reserve Bank, we did not see an uptick. The dilemma is that there were many yuppies at the time that were buying second and third properties, and when this spike in interest rates occurred, some of them burnt their fingers. So there was this long hangover. The very good news is it has started picking up, and now that interest rates are declining, I think we're in for interesting times. So what I did with Prof. Roelof Botha from UJ, there's no nepotism here. She was my best student about 29 years ago that I ever had, but she was from Rensburg then. Maar sy het daarom reg getrou. She married the right guy, Lawrence, who works for Woolies. And we asked the econometric model to tell us what is likely to happen over the next 8 quarters with the value of mortgage bonds, total value, which is sitting at more than 1.5 trillion rand, under the new interest rate environment, with an average 3.7% real prime. Now, I must emphasize, we did this exercise before last week's 50 basis points reduction. So if we were to run the model again, that blue line, looking forward, will shift upwards. And the red line is what would have happened if the prime had stayed at 6% in real terms. It increased by 100% when John Marcus, within a couple of years after her retirement. And that gap, that huge gap, tells me that, now this model doesn't take account of COVID, obviously, COVID-19. But once this thing starts to pass and we get used to living with it, with health protocols, etc., I can virtually guarantee you that we will be somewhere between the red line and the blue line. And that's good news for the property sector. This is an intriguing slide. Below the line, you see the forecasts of Standard Bank, Investec, BNP Paribas, Optimum Financial Services, IDC, Old Mutual, and their forecast for next year. Never in the history of this Economist of the Year competition, which is almost 40 participants, seasoned veterans of economics, competition which Graham forgot to mention, which I won actually a couple of years ago. And never in the history of this competition has the spread between the current year's forecasts and next year's forecast been as high as it is right now. And I think we need to start thinking about not only those green bars, but also about the composition of GDP at that stage, because there will be sectors that are going to take a hammering, and they will have a negative impact for at least a year or two, whilst other sectors will bounce back quickly and even get back to record turnovers. I cannot believe that I'm actually sitting here, and I'm glad that the oil price has increased, because that's a very good sign. Whoever thought that West Texas Intermediate would go to below zero? I mean, they were willing, the oil producers in America were willing to pay a person or an organization, pay them just to take the oil off their hands, because they didn't have any storage space. And this is a good sign, because that uptick in the oil price over the last couple of weeks means that half of the US, the whole of China, several countries in Europe, and a couple of emerging markets are growing again. So there is certainly a hell of a lot of hope. And this, I think, is one of this is the cherry on my cake today. And that is the recovery of the Chinese General Composite PMI, Purchases Managers Index. It went to an all-time record low of 28. Now, how this index, the PMI, works is that anything above the red line, and it's a composite index, in other words, it includes manufacturing and all services sectors. Above the red line, you're growing your economy. Below the red line, you're in recession. If it lasts long enough, of course, but you're not growing. You've got negative growth. You've got positive output, but negative growth in output. And it bounced right back. It lasted 1 month in China. Went back, and then I held my breath, and it stayed there in April, and it went up further. And PMIs are recovering rapidly throughout Europe. This is really, really good news. So the other econometric model that we ran, Prof. Roelof Botha and myself, and some of Currencies Direct clients helped to finance this research. Thank you once again for that, and to Currencies Direct. It was terribly important, I think, to find out what would have happened to South Africa's GDP if it had not been for the fairly dramatic, pronounced shift in monetary policy once John Marcus retired in 2015. When the real prime rate went from 3% to 6%, ultimately on average from 3% to 5.3%. So we asked the model to tell us what would have happened to our country's GDP if the real prime rate had stayed at 3%, and that's the blue line. And what this means in a nutshell is that if John Marcus had not retired, quite frankly, then our GDP would have been larger to the tune of 560 billion rand. That's $500 billion. That's more than 10% of our GDP. So don't underestimate the power of lower interest rates. It's not good for a person with lots of money in the money market account, which is a very bad idea in any event. You should have a balanced portfolio and know when to switch into higher yielding assets, as far as I'm concerned. But the lower interest rates, the longer they last, the faster and the more pronounced our economic recovery will be. And it's around the corner, I like to believe. Thank you very much.
Magic, thanks, Doc. You can stop sharing your screen there. We've got a couple of minutes left, so we've got 10 minutes. And we've had a couple of questions come in from our attendees, which has been fantastic. I see the PMI slide that you showed there. One of the questions actually was, what shape will the economic recovery be? So do you think it's going to be a V shape or a W shape? What are your views on that?
Yes, it's a very apt question and an interesting one, because I got asked that same question. It was roughly about 10 years ago during the SA Property Owners SAPOA's conference at Sun City at the Super Bowl. At the time, that was the largest audience I've spoken to. It's almost 1,000 people. And they had another economist now, and I won't mention his name. And he said, we got posed that question, and he said that, he said in so many words, there won't be a recovery. I mean, he's one of these cynical people. And I predicted a V-shaped recovery, and that's exactly what happened. Now, this time around, it's very easy to call. It will be a V-shaped recovery. China is leading the way. China sets the example as the second largest economy in the world. I mean, I don't like their politics one bit, I promise you. They've got next to Cuba the most journalists in jail awaiting trial in the world. And some of them will probably never see daylight again. But their economy is just unbelievable. That is globalization for you, because there is literally no country in the world that does not procure from China or feed into China like we do with coal and iron ore and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we buy everything from them. They only buy coal and iron ore from us. So we need to start thinking about that as well. So if you look at the Chinese PMI, it is a very easy one to call. It will be a V-shaped recovery. It might take a little bit longer than it does in China, because we are not quite as diversified as they are. But I've got no doubt in my mind that within the next couple of months, we'll be growing this economy. Not every sector. I mean, that's very, very important. And what we could maybe consider doing, just sprang to my mind in the next couple of weeks, if we have another webinar, is I'm busy looking at the 91 standard industrial classification sector-specific composition of South Africa's GDP. And what myself and an associate, Keith Lockwood, what we're doing is we're looking at which sectors are likely to rebound quite quickly, which will sort of muddle along and start getting back slowly but surely, and which will battle for quite a while. And I'd be delighted to share that information also with your clients.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Yes. So, I mean, also the technology, we're moving with the times. Think about it. You know, we've never sat and had a video conference before. You've even told me you don't even have WhatsApp. You know, so doing your chats like this rather than being on the plane has been a bit different. So we certainly, I mean, you know, we're moving with the times, but we're still saying we're still able to carry on working and as, you know, fully operational. Another question, Doc. NDZ is Mrs. Zuma is talking about a possibility of more than 50% unemployment. What's your view on that?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, she's not an economist. I don't know what she is. But I want to just tell her that the 14 million smokers in this country and their dearest friends and relatives that have been traumatized by this unbelievably irrational issue. I mean, you can grow marijuana in your backyard and smoke this stuff, but not a cigarette. I mean, where the hell does this come from? So for her to talk about unemployment going to 50%, I can guarantee you that she has not done any research whatsoever to justify that prediction. Yeah. I've had discussions with lots of business owners, small, medium, and large, in the last couple of weeks. And what most of them have done is they've taken a haircut themselves, the managers, the owners, and they've given haircuts to their staff. And the ones at the bottom end of the ladder have not received any haircuts in an effort to retain their staff. So quite frankly, I think that's an exaggeration. And I think it's spreading panic. And I think it's unnecessary, like much of the other stuff that one hears from that person.
Sure. Okay, I think that's enough questions from everyone. I've got a couple more here that I'll ask you. We've got sort of 4 minutes left. Doc. So another question that was posed here is, what in your view, what's your view with regard to the US Fed buying up mortgage-backed securities? And, you know, given the global financial crisis, what's your view on that?
You see, there's a debate is raging amongst economists and especially monetary economists about this issue of quantitative easing. It's been called other things by some people associated with the government as well. But as long as interest rates are very low, and as long as it doesn't last for a very long period of time, let's say 2, 3, 4 years, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. So one needs to look at the intricacies of the global capital markets and how they will react. If you just look at one of my slides that compared the bond yields, you have negative real bond yields probably in 24 countries in the world right now. So why the hell would you take your pension fund money and put it in something which is guaranteed not to give you a pension one day? So interest rates will come back sooner or later. The emphasis now should be on growth. So whatever means you can find to stimulate growth, which is an application of Keynesian economics, which is being practiced all over the world, you must use it. There's a group of economists that have now come up with this idea of government borrowing 100 billion rand, or 100 billion rands, on the global capital markets. Okay, that's quite obvious. This is not very ingenious. What one should concentrate on now is what they're going to do with that money. If they're going to use that money to resuscitate the low-cost housing program, which will guarantee you massive employment creation and an immediate broadening of the fiscal base, great stuff. But then we must make sure that municipalities and the public sector at large is geared to make 100% sure that the money goes to the right places and not into the pockets of some people, as happened in the previous dispensation. If I may, maybe, Graham, with your approval, just recommend one book to our viewers, which is, in retrospect, it looks like a futuristic book. Daniel Pink is the author. He's fairly well known. The book's name is Drive. It's not like driving a car, Drive. But then it has a subtitle, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. It is an unbelievable book. If you read that book now, you can see literally what is happening now during this lockdown, and you'll see a hell of a lot more of that in future. It is it'll take our viewers probably not more than 2 hours to browse through that book, and they will look at it repeatedly. It's really recommended reading during lockdown.
Absolutely. Lovely. We've got some time on our hands, some quality time that we can spend reading with a fireplace. It's freezing. I don't know what the weather's like in Pretoria, but it's freezing here in Cape Town. I think there's snow on the mountains.
I've got 3 t-shirts underneath this shirt.
Old school. You should be wearing a vest, Doc. That's what you should be wearing. Okay, so last question. With the huge coronavirus package announced by government, how will the impact on the ZAR US dollar exchange rate be in the long term? You did mention that you saw it strengthening, saw the rand that it's oversold, that we should see some strength. Is that short term, long term? What's your view?
Personally, I don't think that our stimulus package is going to have a material impact on the exchange rate. I cannot see that happening because it will be financed in a very gradual fashion. It will be financed through a large variety of financing sources, including a slight broadening of the tax base from the very low level where it is at right now. Because remember, the temporary basic income grant, which is a brilliant idea, the people that will get that grant, their consumption their propensity to consume is 100%. All of that money will be spent. So you will immediately have a fiscal backflow effect as well. So I can't see that having a big impact. Remember that every emerging market country and virtually every high income country in the world doing exactly the same now. They're trying to stimulate the economy. They're trying to assist people. Of course, countries like the US and most European economies have a very strong unemployment insurance scheme running. So they can tap from that. And that's the essence, one of the cornerstones of Keynesian economics is anti-cyclical fiscal policy. So in the good years, you build up your unemployment insurance fund. Companies can afford that. The contributions, And then when you have a bad year, like we're having right now, the worst possible year probably in the last century, then you can use that money to keep it going. So your troughs and your peaks of your business cycle, you even them out in this way. And that's exactly what our government is doing right now. And I think that part of the policy is quite good. Some of the regulations surrounding lockdown are just very weird. To quote also to some extent Mr. Trevor Manuel, I agree with him.
Sure, but let's hope, I suppose we hope that President Ramaphosa's sort of pulled one of the old tricks out the bag. You know, if you're having a dinner party and you're not really sure how to cook, you just sort of keep the crowd waiting. And then when you serve the food, they're so happy to have it, they're so hungry, they just love it. So we're going to level 3. Let's hope that the food that's being served is going to be enjoyed by all and help stimulate the economy. Doc, thanks so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us. We've run through our time just over by 2 minutes. Just wanted to say thanks very much again, and that we are on hand to answer your questions, help you with your currency transfers. And also, if you'd like to, we're going to send out a recording of this to everyone who attended or everyone that registered. If you'd like to receive the Daily Mailer and the Bright Side that's authored by Dr. Botha, please just pop us an email. We've sent the contact details a couple of times in the chat there, info@currenciesdirect.com. Again, just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time, joining us. We appreciate your business, and stay safe, stay well, and look after one another. Cheers.